Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal this Sunday evening. I hope you're doing well, whether you're watching or listening to this around the world. It is, of course, just about half an hour since the full-time whistle has blown at Anfield, where, as you can see, this isn't Anfield, just in case you're wondering. This is my dad's house, as you can see by the 1971 Arsenal double shirt hanging up in the background. Yeah, mad game at Anfield. 2-2. Didn't seem like it was going to finish like that at half time, but fair play to Arsenal. They found a way to sort of dig themselves out of the hole they're in, and I think they deserve an awful lot of credit for it, I have to say. So we're going to talk about that in today's show. We're going to go quickly about review the game, do my player ratings as well. And of course, tomorrow morning we'll do the real in-depth reaction show. So if you want to get involved in that, come down below here. Give me your thoughts, your comments on what you saw today at Anfield, who impressed you, who didn't. I'll pull some of them together and get them included in the show. And as I said, 2-2, really mad game it was at Anfield. Absolute classic game of two halves. Liverpool 2-0 up at half-time. Arsenal fighting back in the second half with goals from Martinelli and Mikel Merino before Merino was sent off with 10 minutes to go. And then Arsenal had to survive a sort of late spell of pressure from Liverpool and a goal that was ruled out correctly by referee Anthony Taylor within the last few seconds when it looked like Liverpool might have snatched the win. And yeah, it was a weird game. Look, this was always going to be a really, really difficult game for Arsenal. I was worried about this game, I have to say, given the week Arsenal have had, what happened in Paris, the physical toll of that, not to mention the sort of emotional toll of that, and then having to go to Anfield of all places, where Liverpool are in party mood with the pressures off. Yes, they had a bad result against Chelsea last weekend, but this was their first game back at Anfield. And you just kind of knew what the atmosphere was going to be like. And how the first half panned out was kind of exactly what I was expecting to happen. And I really did fear the worst when they got those two goals in the space. I think it was 86 seconds, something like that. They scored their two goals. Luis Diaz got the second one and Cody Gakpo got the first one, obviously. And I was sitting there thinking, you know what, this could end up being like seriously bad. We could be looking at a sort of 5-6, 7-0 hammer in here because of you just looked at Arsenal, especially defensively and midfield without Declan Rice initially. And there was just holes absolutely everywhere. When they went forward in the first half, I actually thought they played all right and they did some decent stuff. They caused Liverpool some problems. You know, Bukayo Saka should have scored when it was 0-0. They had other chances as well where they turned the ball over high and they didn't take advantage of it. So that end of the pitch, I actually thought was looking all right in the first half. It was just at the other end. Whenever Liverpool, you know what Liverpool do. You know, they sort of soak up pressure and then when they turn the ball over, they just hit it long. They just boot it down to the wings for Salah or Gakpo or someone to chase into the space. You know, they're so good at it. They turn defense into attack so quickly, so directly. And Arsenal were really, really struggling to deal with that. There was just holes absolutely everywhere. There was no sort of defensive line, especially with the two centre-backs, Kivior and Saliba. They were a long way away from each other. There was they weren't really operating as a partnership. And every time Liverpool started to go forward, you felt like there was a goal coming. I mean, David Raya made a fantastic save to deny Luis Diaz at 0-0, but then the first goal came. It was bad. Saliba sort of switched off a little bit. Ben White got caught with a ball down the side that they sort of got away with it, cleared it off for a corner and then a throw in, and again, then they were sleeping. Liverpool took it quickly. Great ball in from Robertson. Gakpo heads in 1-0, and it was just all too easy for Liverpool. You don't want to go to Anfield and concede a goal like that. It's hard enough playing at Anfield at the best of times, let alone if you're going to go and give them goals like that. And then within 2 minutes, it was 2-0 again. Brilliant ball by Salah, but the space between the defenders again exposed by Szoboszlai's run through, and then he sort of scuffed his shot past David Raya. Saliba again sort of caught on his heels a little bit, wasn't really switched on, and Diaz got there first and turned it into an empty net. And as I said, at that point, I was kind of looking at that. I was looking at how the sort of body language of the defense and the midfield, and I was thinking this could get really, really messy here. And that's why I think the players deserve an awful lot of credit for what they did in the second half. I think obviously there was a few little tweaks that Mikel did at halftime. He sort of swapped Trossard and Martinelli over. We saw Martinelli playing more often than not as a sort of central striker role, and Trossard was over on the left. And it just immediately made a difference. You could see that with the way Arsenal were playing and how quickly they were moving the ball and kind of the intent they had when they had the ball at their feet in those early stages of the second half. They just had something a little bit more about them and they were on the front foot. And it was very similar to the way they started the game against PSG, actually, in the second leg last week. You know, absolutely looking like they were determined to try and force their way back into the game. And of course, they did that with the goal from Martinelli. It was a good tactical tweak, I thought, from Mikel Arteta. It's something that a lot of people have been calling for more often, not to see Martinelli down those central areas. And obviously, it was a lovely header from him. Good play by Trossard. It was bad from Connor Bradley, who was in for Trent Alexander-Arnold. We'll talk about him in a minute. But he just let Trossard get that ball in. It was too easy for Trossard. It was a great cross and it was a really nice header. Martinelli did well to sort of drift in between the two centre backs. And it was a nice header in, and 2-1 at that point. And Arsenal were they were just looking lively. You could see they just had a little spring in their step, and Liverpool was struggling. They couldn't get out. Arsenal were pressing really well. They were winning the ball high up the pitch. You kind of felt like there was an equaliser coming, and it came from thumping effort from Martin Odegaard, who I really thought in that second half, after that change, when he had Martinelli ahead of him in the central role making those runs, I thought Odegaard was excellent. Got on the ball, he was driving forward, he played a couple of through balls that just was so close to getting Martinelli getting on the end of them. One was a brilliant tackle from Bradley that just stopped Martinelli. The other one was just fraction over hit, but you could just see the difference of having someone sort of making those runs in the central striking areas, and you could just see Odegaard sort of lit up, and then it was his shot. Fabulous effort, unbelievable save by Alisson to sort of tip it onto the post, and Marino was there to head home. Trent, who was had just come on at that point, Trent Alexander-Arnold, to a chorus of boos, was nice enough to rub those boos in the Liverpool fans' faces by playing Mikel Merino on side and allowing him to head into an empty net to make it 2-2. I love the fact that Odegaard took that shot on. He did it against PSG. Obviously, he was denied by Donnarumma in that game, but he did it again yesterday. That ball striking that we've seen that's kind of frustrated us a little bit of Odegaard this season, certainly of late. He showed against PSG and he showed tonight when he does put his foot through the ball, he's got a hell of a ball strike on him. He's so close to winning it late on as well. Martin Odegaard. So it was 2-2 at that point. I thought Arsenal, if anyone was going to go on and win it, I thought it was going to be Arsenal. But obviously the Marino red card, I think Arteta should have taken Marino off earlier. He looked knackered, like totally out of gas. Marino, and he'd been on a yellow card for quite a while. Sort of David Raya's ball out to him wasn't the best. He had his back to goal, and Liverpool sort of pounced on him, and then Marino he had a bit of a shove on the back, but he lunged in. I don't think you can complain too much about the second yellow card for that, and that changed everything. It sort of killed Arsenal's momentum a little bit, and he thought if anyone was going to go on and win that 10 minutes, it was Liverpool. Arsenal were determined. They were sitting deep. They were determined to see the game out, and they ultimately did. As I said, they nearly won it with Martin Odegaard at the end, just with that shot, just fraction past the post, and then Liverpool went down the other end from the corner with the last few seconds of the game and did turn the ball in through Robertson, but it was a definite foul. Anthony Taylor spotted it. Fair play to him. He did spot it. Konate sort of shoved, I think it was Lewis Skelly in the face. It was a definite foul. And so it finished 2-2. And on the whole, I think, like I said at the start, from where Arsenal were at half time, especially on the back of the week that they have had, to come back at Anfield, to find a way to just keep their spirit levels up and to find a way to come back and get themselves something from that game, I think they deserve an awful lot of credit. I think Arteta deserves some credit for his decision at halftime, his tactical tweak. I think that worked. And I think the players deserve a hell of a lot of credit just for picking themselves up when they could have easily just felt a little bit sorry for themselves. And when you sort of look at the stats of the game, it was really, really tight. And you go to Anfield and you have a game as sort of tight as this, I think you can safely come away from it and think yourself very much deserving of the point that Arsenal got. It was really, really close. Arsenal just shading it on the shots. They had more shots on target. They dominated the possession. Obviously, XG, Liverpool just about shaded that with a couple of the chances that they created in the game. But it was very, very even. It was a classic game of two halves, I think. And I don't think Liverpool can complain at all about only getting a point. I think Arsenal can, it certainly wasn't a smash and grab or anything like this. I think they deserve an awful lot of credit for the way they fought back in the second half. And we'll see what Mikel has to say in his press conference. And we'll go over that, obviously, in tomorrow's review show. Right, I'm going to go on to a few player ratings now before I wrap this one up for this evening. Okay, so it was hard actually doing the player ratings because at half time there was especially defensively in midfield, I just wasn't really impressed from what I'd seen from a lot of the Arsenal players. But I think some of them sort of got their marks back up by their performances in the second half. Raya gave a 7. He made a couple of excellent saves. The save he made that ultimately counted for nothing because it was given as a foul anyway before Robertson turned in. But the save he made, I think it was from Van Dijk at the end, was unbelievable. The one he made from Diaz was really, really good. Did make that. I don't know if you can really say it was an error from him, but maybe he shouldn't have played that pass out to Mourinho with his back to goal that he did, that led to Mourinho being sent off. Maybe he could have done a little bit better. There was a couple of clearances that he kicked straight into touch late on, but on the whole, I thought it was a decent performance from David Raya. I thought he came and claimed the ball really well and was pretty commanding in his penalty area. So I gave him a 7. I gave Ben White a 6. See, this is what I'm talking about. Ben White in the first half, I thought was really, really off it. I thought he got exposed a lot and it was easy to get him behind. But I thought as the game wore on, surprisingly, because I thought he might tire because he's not played much football, but I actually thought he really, really improved as the game wore on. He became a real threat at 2-1. He almost scored an equaliser with a shot that he drilled that Alisson saved from the right-hand side, but he just looked much more of a threat and he was combining well with Saka and with Martin Odegaard. So I've moved White up to a 6. I gave Saliba a 6. Again, there was some really nice sort of one-on-one stuff from Saliba, but I think the partnership with him and Kivior, there was real sort of signs in this game of how it is a relatively new partnership and the two of them are maybe still getting used to each other and all that sort of stuff. There was big holes there. And Saliba, for both of the goals, you can look at both centre-backs for both goals and think they were caught sleeping sort of individually. And that just allowed Liverpool to sort of play through them. But I did think there was some other moments where Saliba sort of one-on-one when he squared his players up and when he came away with the ball, he looked really, really commanding. So I gave Saliba a 6. I gave Kivior a 5. I gave Lewis Skelly a 7. I thought Lewis Skelly did really well against Mo Salah. You know, whenever you play against Mo Salah, you're going to be in for a really, really difficult game. But I thought Lewis Skelly handled him on the whole pretty well. And fair play to him. I thought he stood up to that well. So I gave him a 7. Thomas Partey's another one who in the first half I was looking at thinking, oh, Thomas Partey's getting caught out here. There's wide open spaces and I wasn't sure. But I did think as the game wore on that he really sort of grew into it and he was turning the ball. It was good to see him sort of pressing high up at times as well and turning the ball over. That chance in the first half came from him turning the ball over where about 3 Arsenal players then gone in each other's way and no one ended up getting a shot away. So I gave Partey a 7. I don't know how Partey got away with not getting a yellow card in that game, by the way. You can count himself very fortunate. He must have made about 4 or 5 or 6 fouls and somehow didn't get booked. But I gave him a 7. I gave Odegaard a 7. Again, I thought Odegaard, especially in that second half, I thought he played really, really well. It was really sort of driving Arsenal forward and was really key to that comeback. Mourinho, mixed game for Mourinho. I thought he looked really, really tired. Again, first half, I thought he was struggling at times in midfield, but I thought in the second half, he really sort of improved. He was on hand to get himself the goal. And when you sort of look at his numbers after the game, the sort of dual success rate and all things like that, it was a solid performance from him. So I gave him a 7, despite the red card. Arsenal next week in that game against Newcastle, I have no idea who's going to play up front because Trossard's definitely done his hamstring looking at the replays that we saw there before he got substituted. And Marina's going to be suspended. So you imagine Martinelli's going to have to play up front and then it'll be Sterling or Nwaneri out wide. But that's a conversation for another time. Saka I gave a 7. Again, second half, all 3 of the forwards in the second half, I thought just really sort of, they just improved. I didn't think they were poor in the first half. I thought they were the only sort of bright players at times for Arsenal in the first half. But second half especially, they gave Liverpool an awful lot of problems. Loved the way they were sort of rotating. There was a lot of freedom in the way they were playing. So I gave Saka a 7, Trossard a 7. I gave Martinelli an 8. Martinelli was my man of the match. Got the first goal, but just looked a real threat, especially when he was moving into those central areas and trying to get in between Konate and Van Dijk and cause them problems. So he was my man of the match, Martinelli. There was a host of substitutions late on, especially after the red card. You had Tierney, Calafiori, Zinchenko came on late on as well. But those are my ratings for today's game. So Raya 7, White 6, Saliba 6, Kivior 5, Lewis Skelly 7, Partey 7, Odegaard 7, Marino 7, Saka 7, Trossard 7, and Martinelli man of the match 8. As I said, I'll talk about it a lot more in depth in tomorrow's reaction show. And if you want to get involved in that show, you know what to do. Get down into the comments. If you agree, disagree with my ratings, whatever it is you want to talk about from the game today, let me know and I'll bring some of them up and get them included in tomorrow's show. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, what's left of it anyway. And I'll be back to do it all over again in the morning. Take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.